Hello everyone, let's take a look at this game played in 1959 in Bled. White was Mikhail Tal, while black was Vasily Smyslov. Interestingly, Smyslov was the 7th world chess champion, while Tal was the 8th world chess champion. So this is a game against two world champions. By the time this game was played, I believe Botvinnik was the world champion at this time because this was in 1959. So this is a Scheveningen Sicilian defense that's transposed to a Nachdorf with the a6. So if black had played knight c6, this is the classical Scheveningen line. But with knight b d7, this is transposing to the Nachdorf variation of the Sicilian. Now Tal plays f4. I've seen situations where Tal plays bishop g5. But in this game, he plays f4. Now look at Tal's style of play. White has castled. His pieces are dominating. They're in very good positions, ready to start his attack. And then b5, Tal plays bishop f3. Now what happens if black plays b5? That falls to e5, threatening the knight, threatening the rook. Can you see the rook exposed? So let's just go back to what played in the game. So bishop b7, this is natural. And then Tal played a3 to stop that b5 move. Now, queen c7. The queen is rotating to go to the king side to join in the attack. Now it's interesting to see how Tal played his king to h1, moving away from a pin along that diagonal. You can see where the knight and king are on the same line. And this frees Tal for, I would say, for play when it gets wild, because Tal is known for wild play, sacrificial tactics and combinations. So let's continue to see how the game continues. Black has now completed his development by castling. So what did Tal play here? He develops his bishop. And this bishop would be very useful in the attack, as you'll see later in the game. Now here, the engine gives black an advantage and was of the view that black should have played the queen c5 move, attacking the knight. So, but Smyslov played bishop to f8, and Tal continues his development. Now, the game is equal here according to the engine. So in this position, the recommended move was g6. And it's not so easy to play this kind of move at this point, where after f takes e, black plays d takes e with an equal position, with an equal game rather. Okay, so but instead, after knight f5, black moved his king away. And Smyslov playing black is a strong positional chess player, while Tal is a strong tactical player. So this game was now positional play against tactical play. And you know what's interesting? As you watch this game, you'll see that Tal sacked a piece. He was playing a whole piece down against a world champion, a former world champion. So how did he manage to hold the position? So just continue watching and let's see how the game unfolds. This rook e3 is quite an interesting move. I like the idea because you have the option of switching the rook to join in the attack along that third rank. The rook can go to h3, g3 once that bishop is gone. Although the engine is giving white and black an advantage here, but it's quite difficult to see how black has that advantage because white seems to be the one generating the play, but the engine is actually giving black a 0.7 advantage after the move g6. But let's see what Smyslov played here. Yes, he played g6. And then Tal moved the knight inside. And then bishop to defend the f6 knight. And then Tal moves in with his knight. Knight takes knight. It takes knight. And then f6. So here, black is having a 0.9 advantage, which is like 1 pawn. Why? That's a very good question. And how did Tal continue to eventually win this game? So if you notice here, there's a threat of g5 by black. After g5, where does the knight go? You can see the knight on the white knight on h6 is being threatened by the bishop. So once black plays g5, so let's say, for example, white plays a move like this. g5 comes in, and then the queen has to move, and then the knight will be captured, right? So what did Tal play here? Obviously, Tal must have seen all this. So he didn't. He played h3. He played bishop e4. And then Smyslov played g5, attacking the queen. So when the queen moves, black has the opportunity to capture the pawn, so the knight. So obviously Tal must have seen this and now played his queen to f5, threatening queen takes h7 mate. Black captures the free knight. Tal captures with check. And now in this position, black has to play bishop g7, which he played. If Smyslov had played queen g7, then Tal will simply capture the d6 pawn and white is winning. The knight, you can see that pin with the queen and the king, and the knight is pinned. The knight cannot easily go away. And if the rook comes to chase the queen away, there's queen b6 here. And it's becoming cumbersome because white's bishop is going to move away, and then the black bishop on b7 is for example, what does black play here? Let's say black doesn't do anything and play. But what does black play? Let's say black moves his king away from the pin. Let's just assume. Then white has this move, bishop e5, right? And what does black play? You can't take with the queen because the bishop is hanging, right? So you can't do that. So we'll now take with the rook, right? And then after taking with the rook, there's this check. So, it's very difficult for black to play here. And if you say, okay, let's take with the bishop takes, let's say, instead of the king move, black captures this bishop, right? This pawn, right? White will simply play bishop d3, and the knight is gone. How can you defend the knight and the bishop together? You can see where we're going at. If for example you even attack the queen again, there's this move, and you can't take with rook because your other rook is hanging. So you can see from a position that black was winning, all of a sudden things are threatening to change, because queen g7 may look like a natural move, forcing the exchange of the queens, but it actually loses. So Smyslov played the correct thing, which was bishop g7, and then Tal played queen f5, sustaining the pressure on h7. So Smyslov played the right thing, knight g6, and then notice the white bishop is now hanging. What did Tal play here? Tal played rook h3, threatening queen takes knight, and the pawn cannot take. So Smyslov captures the bishop, and then Tal captures the knight. So here, black has a clear advantage, 3.1 advantage in favor of black. Black is a piece up. And what's the compensation white has for this? Just a pawn. So Tal sacked a knight for a pawn. Well, he has initiative and then sustained pressure. So how did he manage to win this game despite being down? So let's continue and see what Tal played. So after rook, because the h7 pawn is being threatened, so rook e7 was the move to defend. Tal brings his pieces. Now he's also putting pressure on the d6 pawn. So what does Smyslov plays? Played queen, rook g8, which is reasonable, chasing the queen away. Tal still sustains the pressure on that h7. So black is kind of has very limited things to do. Bishop, well, this move is natural, expected. Attacking the queen. Tal still goes back. Wants to roll the queen to d3, just trying to sustain the pressure, though you can see that white doesn't seem to have anything much here. So how did he win this game? g4, attacking the queen. Then Tal goes to d3, sustaining pressure on the h7. And then bishop to e5, okay. c4. So Tal is just gradually improving his position. Pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn. And then we have rook to g7, c5. Now you can see Tal is beginning to engineer his position. So what does Smyslov play? Here, can he take the pawn with the queen? No, he can't because of this move. And the advantage has shifted in favor of white, right? So you can't take that pawn with the queen. But can he take pawn takes pawn? Yes, that's what he did. So even though he still has the advantage, the engine was giving white the move queen e3. But still, black still has an advantage if queen e3 is played. But what did Tal play? Tal gave another pawn. Even though he's down, he still managed to sack another pawn again. And here, this pawn cannot be captured because the rook and the queen are covering the d6 square. So Smyslov had to move, and he moves his queen to a7. Okay, that's still fair enough. And then what does Tal play here? He attacks the rook. So here Tal is threatening to win the exchange. Smyslov plays the correct thing, rook d8. Now attacking the d6 pawn. Here, what did Tal play again here? He played his queen to e4, attacking the bishop on e5. So you can see his queen move with a tempo. His d6, the pawn on, why is the pawn on d3 was hanging, but he moved his queen in with tempo. And you cannot take the pawn as black. Can you see the trap here? If rook takes, that's losing because of this mate threat. So you cannot do that. And if bishop takes, right, there's rook takes d6. And you cannot capture because of rook or queen down mate. Either one, choose. So you can see the can I say tricks, sustaining the moves, the tempo. So Smyslov now played bishop e5, d5. So you can see, okay, black is still defending, still has the advantage, but white's position keeps improving, keeps dynamic improvement, so to speak. And then Tal now plays this move, threatening, you won't believe it, queen f8 check. And that will lead to so many things. If no, can he really do that? Can he play queen f8 check? So let's say black plays a move like this. There's a check here, and if rook takes, this leads to mate. Yeah, because the rook has to block and it's a mate threat. So that was Tal's threat. So after the move, Smyslov played a crack. That is a bad move. Rook to d7. Why is that bad? What should he have played? In this position, Queen d7 was the best move for black to play. Queen to d7 was the best move. Why? If queen check, this move, you cannot capture the queen because of the mate threat, as I explained before. So if this move, and then if bishop takes, then there's rook takes, and if rook takes, there's king g7, and if rook takes, there's king takes, and if this takes, there's takes. So black will be a piece up in an ending. So this is clearly winning for black. So that's why queen d7 was the best move. But here in this position, Smyslov played rook d7, and after Tal's rook f7, Smyslov resigned. There's no defense to mate in this position. Can you see the mate? Now you may say, what happens if bishop takes rook? Then there's queen takes, and then this is the only move. And then we have queen takes rook, leading to checkmate. Okay, let's go back to see what other moves can be played. There's no other move to play. After the rook goes there, if you decide to play your rook here, for example, it's still the same, rook f8. And then if the rook goes back to g8, there's bishop takes g8. And then after rook takes, there's queen takes f8. So how can you stop mate? Because the bishop is going to go back, discovering, I mean, it's just, I don't know, it's just, what does black play here? So let's assume black plays, for example, queen g7, trying to move queen g7, there's queen takes c8, and there's still a discovered checkmate when the bishop moves away. So this position is just simply winning for white. And this is how Tal plays his game. Very dynamic and very, very tactical. So even though, and then one lesson to learn from this game is that even when you have a material deficit, there's still a lot of play in the game. As far as your king has not been checkmated, there's still hope in the game. So I hope you've enjoyed this game and have learned from Tal's game. I'll be showing you more of Tal's games so that we can also learn and build up our tactics. Thank you.